أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فإذا برق البصر وخشف القمر وجمع الشمس والقمر يقول الإنسان يومئذ أين المفر كلا لا وزر إلى ربك يومئذ المستقر صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين. I bear witness that no God is there without Allah. And I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, is the last, the final messenger of Allah, after whom no prophet old or new will come. And I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Chapter 75 of the Quran is entitled Al-Qiyamah. And that word is understood and translated as resurrection. I have read from verses 7 to 12 of this chapter. And I interpret it as follows. I interpret these verses as follows. When the mind is frustrated and moonlight disappears, then the moonlight and sunlight are merged. The human being will utter at that particular time, where is there an escape? No, indeed, there is no place to run. It is to your nurturer at that special time who will be the reassurance. Faith is something that each and every individual who is conscious has. It's part of our makeup. It's not a physical part of our body, but it is an essential part of our survival. Faith does not mean having faith in God alone. Faith means the confidence you have of some outcome in the future. For example, people eat food because they have that ingrained faith that it will give them health and strength and sustenance. People leave their home to go to work with the faith that they will reach there safely. And in so many, almost every action of ours, of any individual, is based upon faith. But we must distinguish between faith and perhaps just what we call pipe dreams. A person has faith that things will be better, but makes no effort. That's just what we call wishful thinking. Faith is when we believe in something, we accept something, and we work towards the attainment of that particular object. But sometimes faith is challenged. And we can all ask ourselves, have you ever experienced frustration, depression, desperation, confusion, lack of hope in life because of disease, because of financial problems, because of financial issues, etc., or whether you have made the right choice in marriage or in business or in any activity? Or a person may be worried and experience some kind of despair because they have a court case that is coming up, or some particular issue that they have to account for. In fact, in life, when we look at it, we'll see that the moment an individual is born, they go through some kind of traumatic experience. A baby has to push against the muscles of the womb in order to enter into this world. And children, they go through a traumatic experience, and even parents sometimes, when they have to leave their home to go to school on a daily basis at a young age. When they first start their school, they weep and cry. They don't want to be separated from their parents or from the safety of the home. When children reach puberty, they are in a state of confusion. On the one hand, they are told they are still a child, but on the other hand, they think and they feel as an adult, because they are going through that transition from childhood to adulthood, to adolescence. And the Quran mentions also that when a person reaches their 40s, they also have a midlife crisis. Sometimes people wonder, have I made the right choices and right decisions in life? And particularly relationships with parents, with spouses and so on become challenged at that time. And you wonder, could I have done it differently? And then as one goes on in life, later on you find that as one ages, there are issues of health, of what is going to happen to me. Will I pass away before my spouse, or my spouse before me? Will I have to bury any of my children? Will I part from my parents? And all of these require some kind of faith in order to deal with them. Of course, there are some people who do not want to believe, and so they resort to all kinds of systems and methods to avoid having a positive outlook. They allow others to do it for them. They may go to an obeah person, some kind of superstitious activity they may involve themselves in. Sometimes people who resort to drugs and alcohol in order to wash away their problems, to close their mind from the issues that are there and feel that will solve their problems. And so, the basic issue in every person's life when you go through depression and frustration and hopelessness and despair is that you like to get out of it. You like to rise up out of it. And that is the meaning of Qiyamah. That is the meaning of what is translated as resurrection, but it really means rising up. Resurrection is not when people are put in the grave and then they put a piece of board so that when you raise your head to sit up to answer questions, you don't hit your head, and that's the argument given for the way some Muslims bury, or many Muslims bury. But then people are burnt, people are thrown in the sea, they lose their lives in the sky, and they don't have that kind of opportunity. So that cannot be resurrection. And of course, it says there are people there are angels who come and query certain things in the grave. But if that is so, then what is the need for a day of judgment? Because the angels judge you and then they punish you. The punishment of the grave, as some people indicate. These concepts are not supported by the Quran. The Quran gives a different concept of what is the grave in fact. But no doubt Muslims consider resurrection as an event that is happening before Judgment Day and leading to reward or punishment. But when you look at Hindus and Christians, you will find that they view resurrection as a process towards salvation. The Christians, as you know, believe that Christ resurrected in order to give salvation to the world. The Hindus believe that in reincarnation as a form of resurrection, that you come back into this world to get another opportunity to correct your misbehavior. And that really should be the approach that Muslims take, of course not in the literal sense that they take it, but our understanding of resurrection and Qiyamah is actually a hope for those who do wrong, those who sin, those who are in despair or in any condition in which your faith is challenged. And so the Quran, in this particular chapter, 75 of the Quran, gives us a graphic description of the state which one reaches before resurrection can occur. Before, the word Qiyamah really means rising up, to stand, before you can stand up once again. And the description here is very similar to what I myself have experienced and seen when I was quite young. There was a movie called The Man with the Golden Arm. It was an individual who was addicted to drugs. And what he told his housekeeper, he said, look, lock me up in a room and don't open under any condition. And the movie demonstrated the kind of trauma that he went through, banging the walls, wanting to escape. And psychologists call that the drying out period, when the body is relieving itself of the alcohol and the drugs that have been accumulated, and the person goes through a tremendous amount of agony, but eventually they will get through it as long as they are not supplied by drugs once again. So that resurrection cannot occur when a person insists in continuing evil. You have to put a stop to it at one particular point in time, and that is very difficult, because when you put a stop to whatever is happening, you go through a tremendous experience. If you're suffering from a disease, for example, diabetes, or the fact that you get to be aware of some illness, some problem with your kidney or your liver also, or any kind of illness, or a financial problem, you realize that you cannot go along the same path. If you're in debt, you cannot keep on making debt and then believe that everything will be okay. You cannot keep on making the same mistakes and think that everything will be okay. As long as a person knows that something is wrong and they continue to do it, resurrection will never happen. Rising up or coming back will never happen. They cannot rise up after falling into despair. So you look at an addict, you look at a thief, you look at an abuser who can't seem to stop. They always feel, tomorrow I will repent. Yes, I can give up this anytime. I can stop being an abuser. I can stop being a liar. I can stop anything I want to do. Tomorrow I can do it. Next week. They say they can always stop when they want to, but there's never anyone to stop him or her. He or she wants to, but can't stop doing the wrong thing or going through those experiences of despair. Each person experiences these things himself or herself. Nobody can know what is going through your mind if you are faced with financial difficulties or with emotional problems. I read just yesterday, of a young girl in the United States, very pretty, and her father was a minister in a church, and they moved from place to place, and then at the age of 18 she fell in love and wanted to get married. Then suddenly the father lost his job. The church didn't renew his contract, and the mother was teaching in the church also. She was also fired. And it was a traumatic experience. And then the girl realized that the boyfriend she had was friendly with somebody else. So what she did, she went into the bathroom, took a gun, put it to her chin, and blew her face off, but she was still alive. And the reason why it made news was because after so many years of reconstruction of the face, she has now recently had a face transplant, and that is awaiting to see what will come out of it, so she'll have a new face. But it shows the kind of frustration that a person gets into, that they even want to take their life, or they want to destroy themselves, they want to commit suicide. So a person who endures a severe illness or some kind of emotional problem, they want to know, is there any hope? And so the Quran says, such a person questions whether he or she can really recover, how and when he or she can become upright. Can I really get over this disease? Can I get over this financial problem? Can I get over this family problem, this husband or wife problem? this child or parent problem, whatever the problem may be, can I get over? So the Quran describes the state before resurrection can occur in the verses that I've recited from chapter 75, verses 7 to 12. The entire chapter deals with the process of rising up, and it explains in different phases. One of the reasons, and I explained this, I think it was last week, that this chapter, resurrection, could not really apply to the life after death, because it says two things in this chapter. It speaks about the nafsil lawama. Now, what the nafsil lawama, which is the soul that can be trained, has to do with the life hereafter. It is in this life that we move from the nafsil amara, the soul that is not guided, to the soul that can be trained to do the proper thing, and then reach the stage of nafsil mutmainna, where everything becomes automatic and we can function effectively. And then the Quran in this particular chapter also says that the Quran is revealed, and don't hasten with its recitation. What does that have to do with the life after death? So we have to look at this chapter and the description in this chapter as events occurring in this particular life. So the state before resurrection is described in these verses, and the Quran describes that kind of desperation and frustration and lack of hope as death. And I've already explained that death is not only the taking of physical life, but when you become senseless. And there are so many uses of the word maut or death in the Quran. So that at the time of death or the time of helplessness, the Quran says, when the mind is frustrated, it says, وَبَرَكَ basar. And barak means a flash of lightning. What the Quran is saying here is that when there is still a glint or glimmer of hope, things are so dark, but there is still, you feel that there's a glimmer of hope. There's some people who life is so dark, they have no hope whatsoever until they end up damaging their own selves, their lives. They try to destroy themselves. But then there are others who still have a little glimmer of hope. And that's why the word barq is used here, because it means a flash of lightning that comes. So this is an evidence of the day of rising, that once you have that faith, that yes, I can get through this, that is the day of rising. So once there's a faint or dim glimmer of hope in the eye or in the mind can become frustrated, but there is still a glimmer of hope. And when we look at the word barak, it reminds us of another word that also speaks of rising, the word burak. And we can look therefore and compare these two words, that barak is for the sinner who is in deep despair and sees a glint of hope in order to get back on track. Where burak is is for the believer, the righteous ones, who has not merely a glint of hope but total light, because it means more light that can take you upwards, again arising towards the heaven, towards a moral and spiritual life, as the case of the Prophet Muhammad, as we know, rode on a burak, not a physical animal, but symbolically riding on light that will take us to a higher level. So the Quran says, وَخَشَفَ الْقَمَرُ, when the moonlight disappears, and qamar is really a source of reflected light. The Quran describes the Prophet Muhammad as the Siraj Munira, light-giving sun. And everybody else borrows light from him, especially righteous people, the mujaddids, the saints in Islam, imams, parents who follow the Prophet Muhammad or the teachings of the Quran that the Prophet Muhammad brought. But qamar also means the closest environment, because the moon is closer to us than even the sun. It may not give us bright light as the sun, but it gives a cooling light, and it is there in times of darkness. So it means the closest environment, even that closest environment is unable to help. Your parents, your neighbors, your friends, your teachers, the police, the government, your doctors, they all don't seem unable to help. And then the Quran speaks of the moonlight and the sunlight merging. In other words, when both the moonlight and the sunlight representing all sources of light, all sources of guidance. Together, they become eclipse. They merge. They no longer can assist you. Just as the moon is dark, the sun also becomes dark. And it cannot rescue the person from such a sin, if they are a sinner, or a person in such a state of frustration or despair. So the sun and the moon in eclipses means that the family and even spiritual help is unavailable, as all spiritual life is eclipsed. So there seems to be no hope. No matter how much counseling you give an individual, they feel that no matter how much you give them the assurance, this drug or this medicine will work, they don't seem to have any hope. The human being at that time will utter, at that particular time, where is there an escape? How can I get out of this? So a person in this state wonders where to go. Should I go to politics, cults? Human being is groping in the dark. I read today of a woman in the United Kingdom, in one particular part of the United Kingdom in Wales, and she was suffering from cancer, and there was one particular drug that was more or less guaranteed to give her a longer period of life. But she couldn't afford it. It was so expensive, and the government refused to finance it because it was too expensive for them as well. Even though in other parts of England, the health system financed that drug, but that in that particular area, they felt they couldn't do it. And eventually she died. And before she died, she made a video showing, trying to let people know that there should be a responsibility of people to help such cases. So she turned to politics, she turned to the internet in order appealing to people to see if she could, and everything failed. So the Quran describes this situation as when a person says, where is there an escape? Where can I go? Who can help me? We seem to be groping in the dark to find the numerous evils that are perpetrated by men and women and even children. We see so much of crime in the world today, and people want to know which party should we support, which leader should we support, which government should we put in place. It's a problem all over the world, all over the world. In some countries, they have replaced governments. Within a few months, the government falls. So the government becomes unpopular. The government cannot deliver what they promised. So the Quran indicates to us, no indeed. Kalla. There is no indeed. There is no place to run. You can't go anywhere. No help. So to whom many avenues of escape are tried, but the human being finds no refuge. You try, you look here, you look there. So to whom can I turn? Where to go? No one seems to be able to help. The only recourse the Quran is pointing out to us is to your Lord, your Rabb, Allah. Because Allah is the one, the word Rabb means nurturing you. Will take you from stage to stage until you can reach that stage where you can overcome your challenges. So it says that it is to your nurturer at that special time who will be your reassurance. And that is why it is so important for us to have not only faith in the doctors and the medication and the politics and the financial solutions and legal issues and so on, lawyers and courts. We must also have faith in Allah. We know how much we trust others around us, our parents, our family, our community, our society. We know how much we trust them. But indeed, it is to the Quran wants us to know that the only solution is with Allah, because He has resources. He doesn't have to have a pharmacy with drugs. He has His way and His method to be able to help us to overcome our problems. So what the Quran is indicating to us is that it is not just important to be a Muslim. To be a Muslim is not enough. In fact, the Quran says, don't say you are believers, but say you are a Muslim, because faith has not entered into your heart. Does it mean that a Muslim is one in whose heart there is no faith? One has to have faith deep down in one's heart before you can really access the help of Allah, the guidance of Allah. And so it is important and necessary for us to strengthen our faith in God, because when that time comes of despair and frustration and no one can assist us, that is the time we realize that power lies in the hands of God. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quran al-azim wa nafa'ana wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikril hakim. Innahu ta'ala jawadun kareem malikun barrun raufur rahim. Alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udzu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina may yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa may yudlil fala hadiya lahu wa nashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa nashhadu anna Muhammadan 'abduhu wa rasuluhu. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma ansur man nasara deen Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam waj'alna minhum. Allahumma akhzul man khazala deen Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa la taj'alna minhum. Inna Allaha ya'muru bil 'adli wal ihsani wa ita'i dhil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر. Just after the Fajr namaz, I'd like you to remain standing, and we'd like to offer a special janazah prayer for our sister Samina, who died last week Friday while we were having Jummah. She passed away. The funeral was on Monday, and we'd like to offer in our Jamaat, because she had been interacting with our mosque and Jamaat and Anjuman here for so many years, and we'd like to offer our prayers for her.